Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. Today our group are going to discuss about how can Malaysia beat Indonesia in terms of GDP and PPP. Okay, first of all, let me explain the meaning of GDP and PPP. Okay, for GDP, it is stand for Gross Domestic Product, where it is the sum of value added of all goods and services sold on the market in a given period. While for PPP, it stand for Purchasing Power Parity. It show how much thing would cost in if all country use the same use the same currency, meaning that it measure the price in different country for the price of a specific goods. Okay, now we are going to listen from each of us about our opinion on this matter. So without further ado, let's hear our first candidate, which is Ifan. How about you? What is your opinion on this matter?
Okay, thank you for having me in this discussion session today. Okay, as Firdaus said just now, I would like to clarify again that gross domestic product is a measurement to evaluate the economy of a country. Country with larger GDP will have a greater amount of good and service. Therefore, it will have a higher standard of living. Okay, in my point of view, we can increase the GDP for our country by encouraging corporate company to invest locally. As we know that company always looking for investment opportunity, and the government have to support them to invest locally because local investment can do better, so it can contribute to the economic growth by creating job opportunity. Okay, I would like to give a good example, which is Top Glove, the world largest manufacturer of glove. They initiate to they initiate to hire more Malaysian in last year and emphasize on the safety and well-being of their employee. Okay, they start to invest locally because the production expand greatly in recent year because of high demand for the glove and other protective equipment. Okay, apart from that, Top Glove also engage in investment and start to increase automation in their operation to increase efficiency in term of production, quality, cost, and reducing defect product. With the global demand of glove expected to grow bigger over the next year, okay, Top Glove also invests to obtain and upgrade physical assets such as building, computer, technology device, and a new business. This initiative will increase its production capacity and also continue to provide more employment or job for Malaysian. Therefore, our country can have higher economic growth and increase the GDP compared with Indonesia. Okay, how about the others?
Okay, thank you, Irfan. Now, next, let's go to the next candidate. Afiq, can you give us your peace of mind about this matter?
Okay, thank you, Fidaus. Okay, in my opinion, we can increase our GDP for our country by increasing our exports to the other countries. Um, for in my opinion, Malaysia should increase their exports such as crude oil, palm oil, and raw rubber, and many more. That helps our country to generate more income. This is because increases in GDP move in conjunction with rising exports, and we can see we can charge tax for exporting our product to the other countries. By allowing more crude oil exports, it can increase our revenues to domestic products, to domestic producer. Besides that, exporting a high level or high volume of goods helps in generating income for our country, which stimulates consumer spending and contributes to economic growth. By growing our economy, we can increase our GDP. According to some creditable resource in 2020, Malaysia exported about 5.18 billion in crude petroleum, while Indonesia export about 1.44 billion in crude oil petroleum. This shows that the crude oil export helps in increase. This shows that Malaysia has higher crude oil export compared to Indonesia. Higher crude oil export helps in increasing Malaysia GDP. Hence, we can see Malaysia crude oil export already contributed in overcome Indonesia GDP. Other than that, Malaysia is also well known for electrical and electronics products export. This type of export takes about 36% from Malaysia main export goods, while petroleum products takes about only 7% according to tradingeconomics.com. I think that's all from me. Back to Firdaus.
All right. Thank you, Afi. I can see your point there. Muzamil, how about you?
Yes, thank you. In my opinion, the government needs to increase the infrastructure in Malaysia, especially in tourism area, to increase GDP in Malaysia to beat Indonesia. This can be one of the example of business investment for Malaysia to increase their GDP. According to Tourism Satellites Account 2020, tourism industry in Malaysia has generated about RM 199 billion that contribute 14% to GDP. As we know, tourism is one of the valuable sector that can attract tourists from other countries to visit Malaysia. If the infrastructure is good, Malaysia will get a good review and feedback from them. Hence, the reputation of Malaysia will increase. For example, Malaysia should has communication infrastructure development. Malaysia can develop their coverage of internet to be more stable at rural and city. As nowadays, all the applications are integrated with internet. Malaysia also can work on 5G to make sure all the residents can have high-speed internet. Other than that, Malaysia can increase railway and highway in the tourism sector. Therefore, this investment can increase Malaysia GDP. GDP. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Muzamil. I think it's a good idea there. Okay, how about Alamin? Do you have anything to share with us?
Yes, thank you, Firdaus. In my opinion, as we already know, GDP is composed of goods services produced for sale in the market and also includes some non-market production, such as defense or education service provided by the government. Hence, another way Malaysia could beat Indonesia in terms of GDP is by developing good foundation and improving both of these aspects, which are education and defense. The education and training of a country's workforce is a major factor in determining how well the country's economy will perform. For example, there are some ways to improve the education system of our country. Firstly, by improving the resources for the teachers. Let me give an example. Uh, Computer assisted learning will improve education in developing countries and enrich the educational experience for both teachers and students. The computers should have edge-operated learning softwares and a staff that is technically literate and able to maintain them. Other than that, a new educational model. According to the Stanford Social Innovation Review, investing in test scores and achievement is no longer a useful way to focus on education. A new educational model should combine traditional content with important financial, health, and administrative skills. Teamwork, leaderships, and critical thinking should be emphasized in the education. Moreover, they should be exposed to entrepreneurship, such as discovering and exploiting market opportunity through company ideas such as community recycling. This shifts away the standardized education and will prepare the students to positively affect the social economic well-being of their communities. That's all from me. How about you, Firdaus?
All right, thank you, Alamin. Okay, as for me, I believe that to increase our GDP, our country need to lower their interest rate, as it can increase spending money in consumers' pocket, since the cost to borrow money has been reduced. This is because when the interest rate is low, it can encourage our people to like borrow from like make a loan from the bank to start your business, such as cosmetic or beverage, as they can pay back their debt within a short amount of time, since the amount of their debt now has been reduced. On top of that, this also can lead to an increase of job opportunity, as they will need worker to operate their business. Mm, when there are more job opportunities, it can increase our GDP, and economic inequality can be avoided, as the gap between rich and poor people now has been reduced. So that is what I'm thinking of. Okay, do you guys have anything to add on or objection to my opinion or other group member opinion?
Okay, I do agree with Fidaus that point out to increase spending money. Beside of increase interest rate, it also can be implemented by increase the minimum wage. This is because it will improve the overall standard of living by providing them with more appropriate income to handle the cost of living. Raising the minimum wage also can encourage people to spend and help business in bottom line and also grow the economy. And indirectly, it will improve the worker productivity and reduce the employee turnover. Okay, for example, our government recently have changed their policy. On the 1st May 2022, Malaysia have increased the national monthly minimum wage by 20% from 1,200 ringgit to 1,500 ringgit. However, several people think that raising minimum wage in Malaysia will destroy the economy because it will increase the inflation. But the truth is that if government choose to raise the minimum wage, they will automatically figure out a way to maintain a balanced economy. Apart from that, it also will benefit both company and employee because it can improve employee morale. Therefore, company must pay Malaysian worker better, and the work and the result is it will increase the productivity. This will greatly help the output of organization and company to our country. Okay, that is all for me.
Uh,
Okay,
I also
okay,
want to
go
add
on.
some point about. I agree with your opinion, Firdaus, for lowering the interest rate. This
Uh-huh.
to reduce the cost of borrowing and increase consumer spending and investment. Okay. The lower the interest rate, as you say, that more people will borrow from the bank as a loan, right? Okay, this
Yes,
will
yes.
encourage people to purchase their properties or items such as houses or cars. The lower interest rates also will help in creating ripple effects that increases spending, that increase spending throughout the economy, and thus it help in growing our economy. We can uh, from some source, we can compare the interest rate applied to Indonesia in 2022, which is about 3.5%, compared to Malaysia, which only 2%. We can see the interest rate by Malaysia is a little bit lower than Indonesia, which is good, right? Okay. As Malaysia interest rate is lower than Indonesia, this shows that Malaysia can spend their money more and do bank loan with lower interest, thus help with our economic growth. Hence, we can sense that Malaysia already overcome Indonesia GDP in terms of interest rates. Okay, I think that's all from me, Fidos.
All right. Thank you, Afiq. Um, okay. For me, I think I'm going to change my mind because I see that Ifan's opinion is quite good because, like he said, that the best way for Malaysia to beat Indonesia in terms of GDP and PPP is by encouraging corporate companies to invest locally, so that when our corporate invest in our local, therefore it can increase the production and of good and services of our country. Therefore, the fund of our local citizen has been increased, so they can use this money to improve their like quality and quantity of our local product. So I think that Ifan opinion is like the solution to all of this problem, which is like Afiq Rahizam said that we also can increase GDP by exporting our local product, uh, maybe globally. So uh, before we want to export our local product, we need to find a fund to make this product, our local product. So we need a investor to invest in our local companies. So on top of that, as we invest money in our local company, it will give more job opportunities to people out there. So at the same time, it can increase our GDP. That's what I'm thinking of. So how about you, Ms. Amel? Do you have objection or agree to any other of us?
It is true, Daus. Agree with you. Because if Malaysia invests locally, local branding will raise and become popular. People nowadays are used to follow the trend. So if Malaysia success to encourage corporate company to invest locally, I believe that Malaysian Malaysia can beat Indonesia in GDP. That's all from me.
In my opinion, even though Afik's point is quite strong, but I also do agree with Firdaus' point where he said lowering the interest rates also affected that could help Malaysia to beat Indonesia in terms of GDP. I also totally agree by reducing the gap between the rich and poor people is very important. As per my experience, since I live in Sabah, there is too much difference between the rich people and poor people. Mostly people who live at the rural areas are poor compared to the people who live in the city. This point is also related with my point. Due to the financial factor, many poor families don't have enough money to support their child in education. So this will lead Malaysia to produce more uneducated people. Hence, the educational progress of our country will be slower. Mm, because of that, to avoid more, to avoid producing more uneducated people, the government should notice and provide educational privilege to those who are not able to support their child in education, since education is also one of the most important
Mm,
thing to that could help Malaysia to beat Indonesia in terms of GDP. That's all from me.
Okay, now since we have heard everyone' opinion, so I think we can come out with a conclusion that majority of us agree that Malaysia can beat Indonesia in terms of GDP and PPP by by lowering the interest rate of our country, right? So while the other two of our group member, which is me and Muzamil, is agree on that Malaysia uh, Malaysia can beat Indonesia in terms of GDP and PPP by encouraging the corporate to invest locally. So following the majority, the best way for Malaysia to beat Indonesia in terms of GDP and PPP is basically by lowering our country interest rate. So that's all from us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.